Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for staying with us for the news review. And joining us this morning, we have Dr. Ikea Amwako. She's with the NPP's Communications Directorate. We also have Dr. Kwabena Tanyako. He's Member of Parliament for Cape Coast North. Both of them join Sweetie and me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I see your... Are you a Togbi in disguise?
No, I'm not. I just love beats.
You just love beats, eh? I love beats too. It's been a while since I rocked any of them.
All right.
And,
you should patronize Made in Ghana goods.
Oh, yes, I do. I have a lot of them.
Those are not beads? What's on your wrist? The black one. They're not beads? I always thought they were.
They are pearls.
Right.
Anyway, Doc?
Hi.
I don't know what you are rocking that I'll use to do agenda this morning.
Don't worry. Next week I'll give you something to talk about.
Next week you'll give me something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's get into your quick thoughts, and then we'll head right into the papers. Sweetie will lead us from there. But Dr. Nyako, what are your thoughts for us this morning?
Well, thank you, and then thank you for having me.
Okay. So we're not getting into the papers yet. This is the 1 minute.
Yes. I just want to talk about things that are happening in Parliament a bit, especially with the chaos that have been happening in there, and then people criticizing the Speaker for cracking the whip, and also the first Deputy Speaker going on air to talk about the fact that the Minority Leader has been making a lot of utterances, which in his opinion is not appropriate. And then if he continues to do so, you send him to the Privileges Committee. I think these are things that we need to be addressing as we get along, and then see the behavior of members of Parliament, so they don't disrupt the integrity that that particular arm holds.
I see. You say that the Speaker is cracking the whip. The question is whether he is doing so legitimately. We've had conversations on that from different sides. John Darko of the MPP side, and then Inusa Fuseni from the other side. But Bernard Ahiafo says that he thinks the Minority Leader still thinks he's a majority leader.
It appears so.
Jabs flying everywhere.
I think he just loves to be at the media space, in my opinion. He just loves to rant for no apparent reason, in my opinion. I think there are so many things that he's been saying that are not really backed by evidence, especially the one that he said about Ablakwa, regarding the fact that he had to smuggle his way through to be vetted. That wasn't true. The second bit, talking about issues of the regional minister, the Greater Accra regional minister, that he had to receive calls from people to be able to ensure that he is not really interrogated at the vetting. Where are the proof, evidence?
Well, it's, I guess, the game you politicians play. I saw a Blackwell post yesterday, but let's leave it there.
Yeah, it's very interesting that now you're asking for proof. So then, in the same vein, where's the proof that the Minority Leader, Honorable Afenyo-Markin, has been making comments? Where is the proof that the Speaker, where's the evidence that the Speaker used to suspend if we are now talking about proof and then the rule of law and the way things should be done, then it should cut across, isn't it? And I honestly don't agree with you with a lot of the things you said about the Honorable Minority Leader. I think he's very much aware that now we're in the minority, and he's very much aware that his position now is to basically guard what's good for Ghanaians. So I think that's exactly what he's doing. And so if allegations are being thrown around, the least we can do is to back these allegations with some evidence. Yeah, I think I'll leave that there.
Okay.
No worries.
Yeah, short and brief. Let's start with the Ghanaian Times newspaper. On the headlines, at Ghana Investment Trade Week launch, commit political will to estate sector, core construction group chair to the government. NTC Sierra Leone High Commission to collaborate to fight fake news. GFA commences investigation into Nswatre incident, and 2 friends get 20 years over illegal possession of guns theft. I'll quickly run through, and then I'll only pick 2 stories for us to discuss. Those who plundered Africa must go beyond symbolic gestures, Togolese envoy says. Minority accuses Speaker of overstepping boundaries. You just gave us a bite into that. Parliamentary probe into vetting chaos. assures fairness, transparency, Mr. Emmanuel Kwesi-Bejra said, and actually we brought to you what he said in our AM News Bulletin this morning. Santorini shuts schools as tremors rattle Greek island. If you're planning to go to Santorini, please take note. And NTC Sierra Leone Embassy to collaborate to fight fake news. But I want to focus on the fire that gutted somewhere in Kumasi. That and one more story. Yeah. Fire guts Kumasi Swami garages. So fire has gutted a section of Swami garages in Kumasi of the Ashanti region, leaving several spare parts dealers and artisans in a big loss. This is one of many incidents of fire that we've been hearing of. I'll come to you in a bit. Let me just add one more story to it, and then we are good to go. Bank of Ghana commends Dr. Addison for meritorious service. The Bank of Ghana has commended the governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, for his meritorious and dedicated service to the bank and country. That's a statement issued by the Bank of Ghana in Accra and copied to the media, which said effective yesterday, Dr. Addison started his terminal leave ahead of his retirement from the bank. Doctors, let me start with the lady doctor.
Interesting. I think
Reflections.
two things jumped at me. The Nswatremine incidents, which must be condemned, and condolences to the entire fabulous family, and especially to the family of the gentleman that lost his life. I don't think anyone should seek entertainment by going to watch soccer, football, and then lose their life. It's just something that must be condemned. And I hear some arrests have been made.
Yes.
So I hope the police are able to handle this efficiently and quickly as well, so that it can come to an end. Yeah.
Doc?
Yes, I support her view. I'm also of the opinion that it has become too many, that every time you're having anything to do with sports, we get to the extreme where people lose their lives. It's about time that the security services also up their game, especially at those recreational centers when these games are being held. First of all, I also want to extend my condolences to the family of the deceased, and then we hope that the sports ministry and then the security services will up their game in making sure that investigation will be done as soon as possible, so that we'll be able to know exactly what happened, and then the subsequent strategies we need to put in place to ensure that that will not happen in subsequent games.
Okay. Well, commending the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess those are his colleagues
Yeah.
commending him, isn't it? So definitely, they have worked with him over the years, and so they will be best placed to testify to his competence and his acts. So, yeah, I think this morning I will personally join them. We've gone through a very rough period, and his stewardship has obviously been very key to sustaining us thus far. There was also an issue about Swami, another fire,
Yes.
and I think it's now becoming a problem that we should look at, because now I'm finding it very hard to believe that all of it is arson. There has to be something else that is powering these rampant fire outages around, and it's high time we sit up and look at it. Yeah, and I hope the government is paying attention to that, because I mean it's not even limited to one place. It's not as if it's happening just in Accra. I think there was some in the western region or central region, now Kumasi. So what is happening? Is it something about our climate? Are we having a drier weather? What can we do to mitigate these fires? Because at every incident, a lot of people lose their livelihoods. It's definitely something that is touching. So I think that's something that requires some more attention.
We do know, though, that the president gave a directive that they should station fire attendants at various, the big markets, and also security should be parading at night, so that if it is arson, we can catch the perpetrators in the action.
Yeah.
So that I know is something they're doing about the fires when it comes to the big markets we have in the country. But let me give the nod to you, Dr. Nyako.
Yes, I think I support that assertion by the government. The only issue is about implementation. I think it's far too long that these things have been absent from our market. And as we can see, there's a trend that is coming up almost every year after elections. You realize that these things keep on coming or happening. And it's about time we see what is really causing these effects, and then we'll be able to find ways and ensure that we stop these things.
All right, let's do some other stories then. Ben? Or
Well, Quick reaction, though, to the fire bit. Even as we look for arsonists, maybe we should also be, we might as well start targeting those who take gas cylinders to the markets, those with illegal electricity connections and all of that. They are not supposed to be doing that. And when it's not arson, it usually tends to be one of these.
Electrical.
That is at fault. So if we're going to deal with the menace, we probably should be. I don't know whether we don't need a task force or something, because the market queens will often tell you, we give the directives, don't do this, but people will smuggle these bits in. I remember when I came, when I joined the multimedia group, the very first bit I went and covered was at Odona, and whole place burnt. In fact, we risked it because there was this little stall. I remember like it was yesterday. And in there, guess what we saw? A gas cylinder. I mean, we took a risk in filming it because it could have exploded. But it was right there before us. Yeah. And it was still, it hadn't exploded in the fire, which meant that it could have sparked a second fire and all of that. And we have all of these there. So I think there are other things as well.
After every incident, we have this conversation. But as you're saying, I think compliance is the issue.
Well, let's get into the Daily Graphic now. We must collaborate to rid Accra of filth, Greater Accra Regional Minister. And this problem is becoming like a hydra-headed dragon of sorts. After to launch transit scheme on Abidjan-Lagos corridor and Swatriman owner arrested, that has been looked at. Teacher trainee allowance to go. Government pledges enhanced student loan scheme, and that's the education minister hinting. On the back page, Ghana's space project under threat. Encroachers grab more than 80% of land. And don't keep LPG cylinders indoors, NPA urges public. So I'll do the stories two at a go, and I'll start from the back page. Consumers have been cautioned not to keep their liquefied petroleum gas cylinders indoors, as the practice is extremely dangerous. That practice poses a high risk and threat, as in case of leakage, the naked eye cannot see gas. Hence, the need to keep cylinders outside to avert fire outbreaks. The head of consumer services at the NPA, Eunice Budunyako, who made the call, was speaking during interactions with traders, market women, artisans and hawkers, among others, on LPG safety. It goes on, but just yesterday, I was talking about this issue, and my cylinders are outside. You do this, and I was saying something yesterday that some found surprising. If you switch on the light in your kitchen and there's a gas leak, it could lead to an explosion. It's not just a naked flame or something of the sort, so we really have to be careful. The Ghana Radio Astronomy Observatory project, situated at Kuntuse in the Greater Accra region, to enable scientists from around the world to view and study the universe from within the country, is under threat from encroachers, limiting the range at which the telescopes can capture images and share with the world. The 163-acre land acquired by the state in 1979 through an executive instrument has now been reduced to 30 acres. Look at that, 163 acres. That means 133 acres have been encroached upon. Has now been reduced to 30 acres with threats from indigents to invade the main facility. I want us to reflect on these two stories for now. This bit about encroachment, I don't know, even government lands, a little space, and I don't know how our country works, but quick reactions. I'll start with you. I see you.
Yeah, so I think if we are going to be honest about the situation and try to look at it objectively without political colors, we will see that it's more of like a gentrification that's going on.
Gentrification?
Yes, the private developers are getting very, can I say aggressive? Because there are a lot of accusations of state capture or whatnot. But when you actually go down to look at it, what you see is more often than not, there are private developers who are seeking to acquire the land under the guise of some political access. So
I was just about to add.
Yeah. No, under the guise of, I mean, obviously, most times the private developers are even trying to acquire these lands for themselves, but then they seek to induce some political actors to benefit them. So till we look at it holistically and actually go to the source, why are we now deciding to cede some of these lands to the private developers for development, or do we want to maintain the, should I say, historicity of those places? That's a very important conversation.
But if you look at this story, it points at more like ordinary Ghanaians encroaching upon the land.
Exactly.
Because, you know, technically, even in law, if you have land, you've not developed it for a while, you get squatters, and they are there for a certain length of time, you take no actions, you lose certain rights, and if you go to court, Even in basic law, that is there. So, but this is government land. It's a different matter altogether.
Exactly, and that's probably another reason why it's probably been left in that state for so long. I don't know how much work has been going on with what's the name of the agency? Something about the space. Yeah. I don't know how much activity is on that land, but I'm sure it's become an issue of squatters, private developers, a mix of all of that. And it never seems to be an issue that we are able to get to the bottom of, because it's more often than not, it's easier to just blame someone and just move on the next day to talk about something else. So I think if we want to look at this, there needs to be like a proper national dialogue on it, so, as to how we handle these issues.
Apparently, they have a wall which caters for 20 acres of the land, but you're looking at 163 acres. 20 acres will not help you. Doc?
Well, be held responsible. There's an agency that's supposed to be held responsible. Either the agency or the individual owners of the land, which is, in this case, a state land that is supposed to be supporting a particular...
the Ghana Radio Astronomy Observatory.
Exactly. So how can we have an agency responsible for that plot of land and allow itself for some people to squat on them?
But Doc, I have an interesting question for you. In the past, we've seen even parks and gardens, like land that from Nkrumah was designated for parks in different parts of...
So whose responsibility is to ensure...
being taken over by sometimes political actors?
Yeah, I think that was
where we have to crack the whip. These agencies are supposed to ensure that they protect the plots of land.
As for the
subsequent development,
I think the whip that will be cracked on Ghanaians, that must be a very big whip, because we always talk about cracking the whip, but nothing happens.
100, and look at the number of plots they've lost.
163, they've lost 133.
Yeah.
It's left with 30.
That's it.
That's very little.
So someone is responsible. Who is the leader? Who is the manager? Who is the CEO responsible for ensuring that those plots of land are safe? If these ones are going out, then that means he's supposed to be held responsible.
And Sweetie, Doc and Doc, if the interesting bit is that if government, you see that whip you're talking about cracking, if government starts cracking that whip, then you see the reaction of ordinary Ghanaians. And hey, and we've built here, and it's like someone building on a waterway. We're very interesting people.
Yesterday, I listened to a report. I've forgotten who did that report. Fantastic report. And I think Linda Oklu, Greater Accra Regional Minister, was trying to get hawkers off the streets. And they're saying, we are women like you, have mercy on us. Where are we going to go? Everyone cannot go to the markets. We are here benefiting, pedestrian. And I'm thinking to myself, this person is trying to do a good thing, right? But where do we draw the line between the good thing and the right thing? Because I think the enemy of the good is not the bad, it's the right. Yeah. What you're doing is probably right, but is it good for the rest of us? Is it good for our country and where we hope to, get to? So these are all issues where we have to fight between doing what's good for our people, for our party sympathizers, for ordinary citizens, and doing what is right, because that's where or what propels us to our developmental goals.
I see you have some...
Yeah, I mean, for her, I think she has her work cut out for her, because if you've looked at what happens in the past, almost every, even sometimes the mayors of these big cities, Kumasi and Accra. I remember growing up, almost every time there's a change in mayor, he attempts to clean up the city and is met with so much backlash that some of them actually lose their jobs on the backs of these things. So it becomes a very dicey situation. People will literally threaten not to vote, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. So I'm very interested to see how she handles that. Most people just give up because it's safer to do that. But yeah, and then just a last bit on the land part. I just wanted to point out that it looks like there's a more general issue with these land issues in Accra. Like, young people try to acquire land and then you realize you have to pay 3 other people for the same piece of land. So I think it's high time we look generally at our land system, because that also causes a lot of problems. It means when you are trying to build, you have to budget for maybe 2 or 3 times the cost of the land, because definitely somebody will come with some guards to chase you for some more money. It's something that needs to stop.
System, yeah. Let me just run quickly through these and then we can make tracks. We have about 27 minutes to go. But we must collaborate to rid Accra of filth, Greater Accra Regional Minister says so, tied to some of the conversations we've had. But I know you're passionate about this story. Teacher trainee allowance to go. Government pledges enhanced student loan scheme, Education Minister hints. So the Minister of Education, Haruna Idrisu, has announced plans to transition teacher trainee allowances into an enhanced student loan scheme. to allow students to cater for their own feeding and personal expenses. The minister explained that while the allowances would be maintained in the interim, the government intended to phase the allowance system out gradually. Quoting him, he says, "There is no way you should be feeding a student at the tertiary level. We can narrow feeding to basic and free senior high schools, but at the tertiary level, students should be able to take care of themselves. In the interim, we'll continue with the feeding allowances, but we'll transition to an enhanced student loan system." As I come to you for your thoughts, and I'll start with you, Dr. Nyako, first, two things come to mind. One has to do with, under the Nkrumah era, there was even, and I've been told stories of how at Commonwealth Hall, my former hall, they would serve them chicken and all kinds of things. We came and at our time, nothing like that. But at the same time, you look at the challenges that we've seen when it comes to the buffer stock company, when it comes to feeding, even for free SHS. And you ask yourself whether we should be taking this all the way through. Shouldn't we get the F-cube structures right from the basics before we pursue maybe higher levels? What do you think?
Yeah. You mentioned the era where our fathers were enjoying at the universities. My dad had one room to himself when he was at the university. Now,
The population was also very small.
Exactly, the population was also very small. Now that we have free SHS, we have the one of the three pillars that has been accomplished, which is accessibility. Our review that is built on three pillars. That is the accessibility, we have equity, and then we have quality. Now, we are looking at where our students will be able to have access to education. Once you have these teacher training allowances, then you are restricting access. That means you are going to use the quota system. The quota system will mean that some people will not be able to have access to teacher training education. And that is what this government is trying to put across. That in our bid to reduce the number of people not entering into the teacher training college will mean that the people will not be able to access the funds that are available. So instead of us bringing the funds available, which is the allowance, we rather want to take that out. Use that to rather build schools. So that once you are done with school or you are done with your nursing training, you should be able to go and get some job to do. And I think it's in the right direction. When I was in the uni, you all applied for student loans. Then you have to pay them off when you are done with school. And if you are able to go in that tangent, I'm sure many people will have access to education and after school will be able to pay thereof.
But that's another problem, isn't it, Doc? Some people take the loans and
They
they never pay back.
Yeah. I think on this note, it becomes again about campaign promises. Like, isn't it too early to be seen to be walking back on that? Because I do remember that it was part of your campaign that you would not cancel it because you felt you faced so much backlash the first time you tried to cancel it. So, I mean, that's my shock and surprise this morning.
There's the nursing trainee allowances
And
there
the
are
teacher-
trainee
So-
allowances. But he's saying that in the
Specifying-
interim, it will stay. How long the interim is, we don't know.
No, but that's not what the people were sold. That's just to put that across. That's not what the people were sold. Number two, the nursing trainee and allowances is what I would be a little more interested in because it's a little more nuanced. You know, the nurses do work while they are in school. The diploma nurses, they help around on the wards. So I think for that, their model should be looked at a little differently, even if we decide to have the conversation about cancelling it. But again, how much, I think we've looked at the budget that goes into this exercise before, and it's not such a huge figure such that removing it will be able to fill the infrastructural gap. So if this is what motivates people to go to teacher training school and nursing training, why scrap it?
I also want to believe.
Can I
Go
join
ahead.
in the conversation?
You go ahead.
Yeah. The issue is not about cancelling, and I think I need to make that clear. We are not cancelling the teacher allowance. We are rather moving it into the student loan scheme. So that's not a cancel. The point is everybody in the tertiary institution should be able to have access to funds. We don't want to give you allowances, then you'll not be able to have access to funds when you have to take allowance and still go in and study. So if that is the pool, everybody goes in there, get access whatever funds you have, and then once you are done with school, you'll be able to have some work to do.
Dr. Nyako,
yes, please.
the allowance means that while you're in school, you're getting some small monies
Exactly.
on a regular basis.
Sure.
Cancellation means whatever repurposing is going on, cancellation simply means that you will not be getting those small monies on a regular. So you cannot say that that does not mean they're not cancelling it.
Right.
And
So
it's
you
not
can
everybody who will go for the
yes.
loan, is it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we have people. I was in the teacher training college. I never took any of the when I came to the university, I never took any student loan. The reason was that I was on study leave, right? Okay. So while I was working as a teacher, I applied to go to the university. I was being paid whilst I was studying. So there was no need for me to go for the student loan. So you have students who will not be willing to even access the funds. Right. But make that funds available so that anyone that is interested in accessing it will just go and have it. But we are not saying that we are
Here's what
it.
a quick thought that just came to mind. While I have some disagreements, I also see that, is it like the discussion we've been having about free SHS, that don't make it free for all, everybody, because some people may not necessarily need it, but others will critically need it. In streamlining it, that is where the devil is. I always say the devil is in the detail. And I also have a problem with how we are always tweaking different aspects of our education. Pre-Gaggersberg, we had a system of education that lasted for at least over a decade. And then we started touching it. And ever since we've started touching our education, there are so many problems. And the whole flip-flop, even when it comes to SHS 3 years, 4 years, and this and that. And I mean, whether we were doing O-levels, A-levels, it was clear. You know that you do 5 years of ordinary level, you do your advanced level, lower 6, upper 6, and you move. But now, but just a final bit there. When you talk of these things and these allowances, is it not a rational decision? Because you can look at subsidies. We always like subsidizing, but subsidizing has a cost. If you look at why we've ended up at the IMF that many times, sometimes it has to do with a lot of, we are subsidizing, and then it becomes an albatross around our necks, which is why under Rawlings, at a point we had to decide we are not subsidizing electricity.
The Nigerians have dropped the fuel subsidy as well.
In fact, we still have the zero subsidy policy, right? Yeah. Under the IMF program, we cannot subsidize anything as we speak.
It looks like West Africa is moving away from the subsidies. But I mean, my last thoughts on this is, I mean, if you promise, you better keep to it.
No, but yes, so I pulled up what he said, because I was asking myself, why did I come here? So he said, we will keep the status quo for now, because under the student loan scheme, nurses do not qualify. Therefore, and I'm quoting John Mahama during the campaign time, therefore, we need to make some amendments before we can transition them to student loans. Yeah. So we will maintain the current system until we make the necessary changes to move everyone to a student loan system. And we are calling it the enhanced student loan because we need to increase the amounts to make it meaningful for students. And once a student gets a job, we must, have mechanisms to start deducting. So yes, exactly. He did say that they will maintain the status quo for now, just like Ben read, and then until there's such a time that they, put the systems in place.
So I think that the people that were on the grounds campaigning, there was probably a mix-up there. But again, the main issue is that when these things happen, enrollment usually drops because a lot of people are motivated to go the teacher route or the nursing route because they are motivated by these allowances.
Is that the way it should go?
No, but I mean,
you go because you genuinely have interest in caring for people.
Yeah, but we are looking at the real facts on the ground. We're looking at the real facts on the ground.
Necessarily out of passion.
A lot of people finish secondary school, and because the finances of the family are not great, they opt to go into these models because at least you get some 300 pocket money. So it does drive a lot of the enrollment into these sectors. So if you take it away and then you replace it with a student loan, then are you going to ask them for a guarantor? Is it going to be a no guarantor system? Because the odds are the person who is going to these training institutions motivated by the allowances would not be able to provide a guarantor that is suitable. So those were the issues with cancelling these things. So I hope it's looked at before it can be implemented because it will affect the enrollment.
All right. Let me wrap with these stories. There will be no room for corruption at MMDAs. Ahmed Ibrahim says so. Lands Ministry to roll out measures to tackle Galamsey menace. Sweetie, we've been talking about Galamsey. It's good to see. He says, our collective objective must be to take urgent steps to halt illegal mining activities. restore our forest reserves, and create a mining path that will not destroy our water bodies. And we've seen a little bit of action in recent times, directives and all that. There's this story I wanted to just take a look at. It's an editorial. Our schools don't need bullies. And it's on the back of the latest Takraka incident with the student beating other students with a machete.
I think there's
Then Africa takes GDP recalculation campaign to G20. And finally, Trump's attack on South Africa exposes divisions over race and land. And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa defended his land reform policy on Monday against an attack by Donald Trump that laid bare deep divisions within South Africa over racial disparities in ownership, an issue festering since apartheid. Trust Donald Trump. Quick thoughts, Dr. Nyako. I'll start with you, and then you have your reactions. We go back to...
Then why did you say it like that?
Say,
I'm curious. Trust Trump, eh?
Trust Trump to be
Trump.
Divisive, controversial, everything in between.
Why do you
any
think
thoughts?
divisive?
I mean, I'm merely stating the obvious. When he said Haitians were eating...
oh, they're eating the cats.
I mean, I could give you a tall list of divisive,
what if they were
controversial...
actually eating the cats, though?
No, you see...
What?
I'm just... What if they were?
Listen.
What if it wasn't a lie?
There's some... I've actually done research into that. There's the voodoo element, supposedly... But even if it were true, it's not politically correct to
cover, definitely.
That's my whole point.
Political correctness does not exist to Donald Trump. But this South African issue, it's, I think because of our colonial past, discussing it properly is a little problematic. Because should people also be losing their lands because of the color of their skin?
Right.
So it becomes, we feel some solidarity to our brothers and sisters of our race, but should they be just taking people's lands that they've had for a really long time? And does Donald Trump have the right to interfere with that process? It's very interesting to see that. I was looking for a tweet I saw on my way here from Cyril Ramaphosa, actually. When I find it, I'll go back to it again. I think something about he's actually going to continue with the land reclamation process. So it's going to be very interesting, that tussle between South Africa and the US.
Well, not all leaders, presidents are taking, everything that Trump is throwing at them lying down.
People are fighting
back. I know
back.
Canada, for one, said they're fighting back in the trade wars.
They recently conceded.
Tariffs. So for me, it makes for good TV.
Definitely. The political season this year has been very, very interesting.
And for an advanced democracy like America, I'm always watching out for what are the key learning moments, or what could we be maybe adopting, emulating, what is there to learn? Because where they are and where we are trying to get to, if we are picking some lessons from there, it will do us some good.
Sweetie, since you broached that subject, what do you think? In recent, certain grants, if I may call them, to countries like Ghana have been frozen.
Yes.
For now, every year we get about
HIV and AIDS and
we get about $130 million. This year in 2025, we were expecting to get $138 million. Yeah. It may look small on the state level, but it's a lot when you look at, like you said, dealing with HIV and AIDS, some F-cube issues, mainly rural communities. And how they benefit from there. But I believe it's Uhuru Kenyatta. I saw a video. I don't know whether you've seen the video. Who says,
why are you crying?
Actually, why are you crying? They don't owe you anything. And to some extent, I agree. The Burkinabe leader, though a coup maker, has said that, look, they've relied on France loans for 63 years. They've not developed.
Yeah.
So if the loans are taken away, it's not going to. So I think sometimes Africa has been spoiled. We have everything. And sometimes when you have everything, you fail to realize what you have. And you sit on it, and you go begging someone who has practically nothing.
Yeah. I actually align with that trail of thought. Why are you crying if another democracy somewhere decides that they will not come to your aid? Yeah. It's time to start looking within. You have so many resources. Add value. Do something for yourself.
I think
when we talk about self-reliance and republic, this is what it means. fight for yourself within and be sustainable or sufficient, or whatever the word
I
is.
think the problem is the immediate shortfall that it's going to create.
Yeah.
Because nobody is prepared for that hole in the budget that has just happened of over $100 million. I think that's the problem. So I would have hoped my good friend Trump would have given us some time, but he doesn't seem
I think
interested.
it will come eventually.
Yeah, I do think that he's just looking to restructure USAID because there was some talk about them sending condoms to Hamas. I don't know.
Well, let's get into your papers.
Yes.
Okay.
Bullying. The bullying in schools.
Oh, the
balls,
bullying.
ah.
Oh, yeah.
Bullying.
Oh,
Okay.
both stories are here,
The
actually.
bullying incident.
So this is the publisher, the new publisher. Akwesi Aka.
Are you getting into the bullying incident?
Which-
Doc was
sorry.
mentioning
Yes.
that.
Oh, right.
You mentioned something about the bullying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. It's actually a story in there. So if
also
you're
here.
going to do it, then you might as well do it and then
Okay,
we'll get back
so
to
let
it.
me do that first. We can talk and then I'll come back to the front page. So SHS war, students clash in Kumasi, vandalize school property. Students of Kumasi Technical Institute, KTI, and Kumasi Anglican Senior High School, CAS, in Ashanti region were involved in a violent clash which resulted in vandalism on both campuses. According to the reports, during the violent exchange, students set ties ablaze and hurled stones and objects at each other. The rampaging students damaged 4 private vehicles on the CAS campus, destroyed the school gate, and vandalized a billboard and notice board at KTI.
Right, yeah. That story was in our news bulletin this morning. There was a clash, but I thought you
What's
were going
going
back to
on?
Accra Academy.
Oh, so I don't have that in my
So I
paper.
believe this editorial was linked to that. But have you seen the video?
Of the was it the
So
guy
there's-
using the machete?
Yes.
Yes, I have.
And yesterday I was mentioning that even before that, I think sometime last year we had the Adisco incident where someone put another student in a chokehold.
Yeah, and there was even the stabbing of O'Reilly.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. All of these incidents are happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, back in my day, there was bullying. Bullying has always been there. But this extent of bullying is a bit, I mean, to lash someone with a machete, anything could have happened. You miss the turn and it cuts the person, or you could disable someone for
Yeah.
life.
But, Doc, you wanted to say something on that.
Yes, I think the whole educational system where the disciplinary action has been taken away from the teachers is also affecting all these things. Honestly, when we were in school, I was in Addis Ababa College, and then when we were there, anytime you hear any teacher coming by, you are really on your toes because you never know what they will do. This time they've asked that we shouldn't discipline our kids. No teacher will be willing to go there.
Use corporal punishment, not to discipline. I'm just.
What punishment have been going on in our schools? None.
Well, okay.
None, honestly. None. The kids walk around anytime. Even in Cape Coast, you see some of the kids walking in town. You ask them, where's your exit?
How dare you back then?
Hey.
Without an exit heading out, you go over.
And I think we all Cape Coast people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you go, you would think you had made it through, accounts ahead. By the time you come back,
One of the teachers is waiting for you. They already know where you are going and at what point in time you return. So definitely someone will catch you. This time when they see you, when the teachers see you, they don't even ask you any questions. They ask you to go because they are scared to say anything, and then the authority will take them out.
what can we do at this point?
I think it's about time we review that and make sure discipline is I mean, how can you raise a child without discipline? It's highly impossible.
But is discipline only, going back to what Sweetie said, because you also want children who can relate to their teachers. The fear factor must be minimized. I agree on the point of discipline.
Right.
Spare the rod, you will spoil the child. I agree with that. But you don't need to unnecessarily terrorize the child, create fear. And
During
panic.
our time.
So what?
During our time, where our teachers doing that overly, they weren't doing that. It's only when you mess up, then they give you some strokes.
Some overdid it. I still remember some.
Yeah,
I do like this
Still in
show.
my head. Don't mention
I think it's, Dr. Kia, we'll come to in a bit, but I think it's two extremes, right? Those days, what qualifies as corporal punishment, you know, teachers could lash you and you have blisters, you can't sit for days. Yes,
Yeah.
we get the lesson, but at the end of the day, you've inflicted pain on me, you know? So I think the conversation started from reduce the, you know, the degree of pain you inflict on a child, you know, your efforts to discipline that child, and now we've moved to the other extreme where we just
leave
let them
them.
be. So it's, you know, it's a fine line. We have to really have to know how to walk
I
that
think we
line.
are trying to tailor the discussion or the argument towards only when they are meting punishment or doing that. There are other ways you could discipline a child.
Okay.
It doesn't have
Like-
to be using, like the one we do with ground students. You ask them to weed. You ask them to go and
Hey,
clean the
I hated
kitchen.
that weed.
You ask them to go and clean the dining room. You ask them to clean the dormitory. There are so many ways that you can punish them, not simply by just lashing them or beating them.
I see Doc has something against weeding. Which school did you attend?
Holy child, though.
Holy
Oh, really?
Holy
So-
Co, you know they weed there.
What? Not really, oh.
Girls' schools.
You could avoid it.
But you can scrub.
Yes, the
Exactly.
scrubbing was a
No, but I'm
problem.
curious. Did you guys ever have any weeding experience? No.
I think most people did.
They
Yeah.
did.
But not
Most people did.
Most people
I like the
did.
way you say most people did.
It was not bad.
I used to try my best to avoid the weeding, and just as everyone is, you couldn't even see the gate. So when your parents send you up the hill, the next time you see the gate is when you're vacating. So I don't know what's going on. Every time you turn on the news now, somebody is beating somebody, stabbing somebody. Children, life hasn't even started, and what you want to do with your time is to beat each other. That's
Anyway,
serious.
let's move
I
forward.
think the social media is also influencing their
Indeed, I agree with you.
their behavior. And we need to also look at that in that context.
So some of them are doing things for money at this age, and you're asking yourself. But my last bit, a warning, we should look at where Western society has got to. We shouldn't underestimate these school shootings and all of those. That is where they have got to in the bid to not discipline children physically. I am not one for corporal punishment. I teach Sunday school. It's not necessary. There are ways of dealing with children. But there comes a time where you need to whip a child in line.
Yeah.
The O'Reilly incident was terrible to watch. Anyway, let's finish with this. So back to the new publisher, Akwesiaka reveals MP's balls squeezed in Parliament.
MPs what?
MP's
Very
balls
headed.
squeezed in
No,
Parliament.
is it which
I'm sure we all
which
heard
balls
that.
are we talking about?
Well, I had some time to breeze over the story
In fact,
earlier.
I wish you can read the story, the
Yes,
details.
like-
It's-
Oh my God, sweetie, I thought we didn't have time. Okay.
Details, huh?
The mature testicles of a prominent member of parliament were grabbed without his consent and squeezed hard by another member of parliament. The recent chaos that broke out at the appointments committee, Honorable Alexander Kwesiaka, MP for Achimota in the Eastern Region, has revealed. Mr. Kwesiaka on Monday morning told Kwesi Parker Wilson, host of Oyerepa Breakfast Time, that he was a witness to the testicle squeezing, but the cameras could not capture that particular aspect of the drama. It sounds so like stranger than fiction.
I mean, when you look at the video, you see where Roxy was standing. It was nowhere close to where anybody could even have access to hold him in the first place. So I'm surprised about this story.
Oh,
I
yeah.
met him.
But he
You know, there was a point where he
But
gave
were you
contact.
there? Were you there
I was
in that material
I
moment?
met him. We sat to discuss the whole issue.
And there
I
was no
told him about
squeezing
that.
of
I said,
any-
No way. He was the one rather talking to them to be able to calm down. So a lot of people are not even happy that they had to add him up with a suspension because he was not throwing tables. He was not
Oh,
pushing
but there was
tables.
that fisticuff.
Wait, did you see him do that?
Oh,
I guess
with
though,
some-
when the committee sits, then they will establish who wasn't, because I saw people too who were in that line, but were not directly involved. In fact, I saw someone who, when a table had been put, a chair had been put on the desk,
removed
the
the chair.
table, he actually took it down. So you may say he's involved, but what was he doing? He was not involved in the fracas.
That's why you need to give people the opportunity to explain themselves. You can't just level a suspension without investigating the issue properly, because you are definitely going to leave some issues on the table. You are going to miss some things. On that, I don't know, this is just really interesting. I guess
Maybe that'll be your last one, and then we can go to Dr. Nyako.
Yeah, I think, no, let him have it. It's still on the testicles matter. I think he was trying to give a description of who the MP is. So if
I don't want to talk about
Dr.
this.
Nyako, let's get it.
You want to identify the MP?
I'm very curious as to.
Roxon Dafemiapo, he's a...
Oh, that's who he's talking about.
Yes, the
Yeah,
one
it
he's
makes
talking
sense.
about.
It makes sense.
Why does it make sense?
Wait,
No, because
I was going to ask the same question.
no, if I read it to you, you would understand. He said the
right.
person is from the Volta region. He loves to wear spectacles, has been consistent with his well-trimmed haircut, and dresses smart. He's not a first-time MP and belongs to the majority caucus. So I was just thinking.
Yeah, but there are many
All
who
morning.
fit- who
Yeah,
fit
exactly.
this.
I hadn't singled it down. So
Right,
I was
that's
just
him.
thinking, who could it be
That's
with
him.
all of this?
Yeah, but it didn't happen. Honestly.
Stranger than fiction.
Yeah,
let's
exactly.
cap it at
Stranger than fiction.
It didn't
Dr.
happen.
Nyako, your newspaper.
Yes. This one talks about offensive youth threatening action of unresolved chieftaincy dispute. It talks about President Mahama backing APD. Victor Asare Bampo takes over from Da Costa Abuaje as NHIA CEO. NDC holds crucial NEC meeting Thursday amid appointment concerns. They talk about the exceptional track record of Dr. Siama, new BOG governor. He spoke about securing digital payments, the need for advanced security measures. And then another gentleman here, Koka, also talking about parliamentary chaos unacceptable, but suspension of MPs was a misstep. And then NPA warns public against keeping LPG cylinders indoors. And I think you mentioned this bulletin earlier. I wanted to find out, is there any designated distance that the gas is supposed to go away from the stove?
Or just outside?
Or just outside? Because I may have my stove right by the window, and the gas will be just outside.
Yeah, that's okay.
I guess.
I think in the open is the idea.
I guess common sense should apply in, because mine is quite a distance from where the stove is behind and at the other end. But I guess the whole idea is distancing it so that in case of an explosion or something, you are not directly affected.
Okay.
But of course, we could interact with the relevant agencies.
Yeah, and they have,
maybe there are.
I'm sure NPA has some guidelines.
Yeah, they should do. Victor Bampo takes over from Da Costa, NHIA. And I think 36-year-old teacher sentenced 10 years for stealing over 200,000 from bank.
How did he do that?
Yes, how did he do that? Trump threatens to cut funding for South Africa, I think, over land policy. I think we just mentioned that. And that's it. Stephen Appiah talks about Kudus.
Right.
Yes, just encouraging him against Chelsea game. That's it. And wife of late Asante Kotoko supporters. I don't think that's it.
Wife of what? I want to know.
We spoke about it earlier.
Wife of the late Asante Kotoko supporter, Polly Weeps, as she recalls last conversation with
Yeah.
Let me just sneak in this bit, something that escaped me. Page 18 of the Daily Graphic will not be part of approval process for last 10 ministerial nominees, Minority Leader declares.
Yes, I think there were.
Like it's war.
Doc will be very interested in this story.
No, I think some conditions were laid down. So
Okay, can we hear that, please? Then we can.
If you watch the press conference, I think the Minority Caucus expressed displeasure with some of the things that were going on, like the clerk and the attitude of the clerk and whatnot. So I'm sure, of course, we are always available for a discussion to be able to come to an agreeable.
But do you think the attack on the clerk was appropriate?
I don't think the clerk refusing to invite the minority in for the vetting was appropriate.
Was appropriate.
I don't think her refusing to invite them in was appropriate.
But I think it's whether or not he thought that the minority. In fact, it didn't end there. Yesterday they had another press conference where he went on to talk about how she's partisan and she's biased.
Exactly.
And,
In the past, what she seemingly has done and what she has
we have to give some of our leaders some brief, because they definitely have. There's a reason why they are saying this. If it was something that was petty, I don't think the Honorable Afenyomakin would go on with that. Even if you watched his press conference, he even talked about WhatsApp statuses and things. And he has had to work with this woman as majority leader as well. When you hold certain positions, it falls on you to portray a certain kind of neutrality as a clerk. So they expect that from her. I don't think that's too much.
We have to get out of here. Maybe our politicians can take a cue from this quote in the Daily Graphic today. It says, winning or losing an election is less important than strengthening the country. Maybe both majority and minority can take a cue from that. It's by Indira Gandhi. It is what it is. Thank you for joining the conversation. We had Dr. Kwabena Mensah-Nyarko, Member of Parliament for Cape Coast North. We also had Dr. Appiah Amwako, a member of the MPP's communications team, joining us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And have a wonderful day. That's how we cap it off. Stay with us. Sports is up next.